John Olson is my name. I am employed at a trading company and am 49 years old. My employer is a well-known national brand. At one of its branches, I worked. The branch president called me in one day. "Son, you have a transfer order." "Really? Where are you going at this moment?" "It appears that they would like you to return to the headquarters." "I understand. After 2 years, I've just now begun to form meaningful relationships here. I know I'll miss you too, but this is a directive. You must first visit the headquarters to get to know your new employer." After 2 years, I was once again passing through the main entrance of the headquarters. It was just as spotless as usual, and I couldn't believe 2 years had passed. Even beyond the scheduled hour, I waited in a conference room at the headquarters for my new boss, but nobody arrived. After 30 minutes or so, a woman came into the room. "Mr. Olson, you have to be. My name is Mary Emerson, and I oversee HR. It's good to meet you." She merely bowed silently, not even bothering to say sorry for being late. "You know, you still have time to decline this job offer at the headquarters." "What are you trying to say?" Manager Emerson gave me a scornful laugh when I inquired. "At the headquarters, people like you are not going to cut it. Perhaps you ought to have continued to feel at ease at the lower-level branch." Her remarks gave me a migraine. What was wrong with her? "No, I'm going to give it my all at the headquarters." Emerson, the manager, gave a snort of disapproval. My return to headquarters was scheduled for 1 month later, even though I was filled with sadness. It was my first day back at the main office. During this time, I should have ideally attended some training at the headquarters, but I was too busy at the branch handling handovers and work, so I didn't have time for introductions. I was therefore a little anxious about starting work without doing any homework. I was glad to be back at the headquarters, though. Feeling conflicted, I went inside the main office. I waited for Manager Emerson in the conference room rather than going directly to the office. Today, we were meant to go to the workplace together. Manager Emerson showed up on schedule. When she saw me, she remarked, "You actually came." She appeared, for some reason, disappointed. I bowed after enduring her impolite demeanor. "I'm excited to collaborate with you. To be clear, you might not be a good fit here for someone your level. Recall that our business is among the top enterprises in the nation." "Yes, I do comprehend. Very few people are employed in the headquarters. The majority arrive at the branches." That was undoubtedly accurate. Only a small percentage of those who apply to this company are hired for the headquarters. The majority are categorized by branches. It is rare that submitting a transfer request to headquarters is successful. Working in the headquarters is therefore somewhat of a prestige signal. Well, until 2 years ago, I actually worked at the headquarters. I take it you were downgraded to the branch. It's surprising that you returned. I chose not to disclose the specifics of my transfer to the branch because it was not a result of a demotion. I looked into your past. I take it you only completed middle school. Yes, you are correct. Manager Emerson shook her head, unable to believe what I was nodding. How on earth could someone like you have ever held a position at the main office? Did you use any unscrupulous tactics? That isn't the case, though. Someone who just completed middle school could not possibly work at the headquarters without some deceit in the hiring process. Manager Emerson came up to me and was really aggressive. No, I didn't. I aced the test with flying colors. Don't make unfounded allegations, please. I'm sure I'll find something about you. It appears that I've drawn the attention of a challenging individual. My daughter is employed here as well, by the way. Oh, I see. How are you aware? Oh, right, there have been some rumors. Manager Emerson was pleased when he heard my response. Oh, really? Here, my daughter is really well known. She is extremely outstanding and my pride and joy. Manager Emerson suddenly seemed happier and escorted me to the office. I was able to finally get inside the HR department, but the situation was far from finished. I was standing in front of the HR staff during the morning assembly. I was introduced to Manager Emerson. John Olson is who I am. He will be working in our department as of right now. I'm excited to collaborate with you. The staff members clumsily gave me a bow in return. Manager Emerson then grinned. Because he dropped out of middle school, feel free to treat him like a servant. He's really only useful for that, she remarked, chuckling. I lifted my head gradually. Please take good care of me. The staff members looked about anxiously as I said this. Then, a more senior staff member hesitated to speak. Madam, what about him? How about it? The worker gave me a permission-seeking look. So it's already known. I interrupted the worker. I apologize, manager. I haven't given a decent introduction yet. John Olson, the middle school dropout, is that not sufficient? Manager Emerson continued to laugh. No, I haven't mentioned something. After saying that, I gave my business card to someone. My name is John Olson, and I work as an audit officer. Kindly remember me. An auditor. Yes, I replied with a big smile. Manager Emerson's face became tense. She turned to see how others were responding. Not at all. I'd never heard of anything like that. You could never work as an audit officer. How come you are so certain that isn't true? In reality, I work as an officer. Feel free to check with your superiors if you have any doubts. When I assertively stated this, Manager Emerson appeared perplexed. I was hoping to keep this a secret. After all, my job is to conduct audits. I ought to have promised everyone in advance to keep it secret. The staff members bent their heads upon hearing this. I'm so sorry. No. It's not you I'm talking about. I mean, it's natural for everyone in HR to recognize me since I was here until 2 years ago. I'm regretting my own lack of foresight. My comments appeared to relieve the staff. Why is everyone acting like he really is an audit officer? You all aren't conspiring to trick me, are you? I asked. Why would we do that? What benefit would there be in that? But Manager Emerson would not listen. How can a middle school dropout become an audit officer in a big company like ours? It's absurd. She chuckled once more. Let me explain. This is John Olson, the audit officer. He scored top marks in the entrance exam. Manager Emerson, though, chuckled. My daughter did that too. Does that mean she should be an officer right away? No, at the time. Audit Officer Olson was only 15 years old, yet he outperformed many college graduates. That's what makes it impressive. What? So he's just a bit good at studying? It's not just about studying. The audit officer was immediately effective in the sales department. He single-handedly established connections with our most important Chinese business partners from scratch. It's not an exaggeration to say that he helped make our company one of the top ones in the country. The audit officer has numerous other achievements as well. The worker was explaining my accomplishments with great passion. Although uncomfortable, it was essential to support my claims. Manager Emerson's color darkened as the staff member continued. Recognized for these achievements, he became the youngest ever appointed audit officer. At last, Manager Emerson appeared to acknowledge the reality about me. So your transfer to the branch 2 years ago was also because? Yes, it was for my auditing duties. Excuse me, but what exactly does an audit officer do? My role is to rectify any misconduct among employees. Of course, that includes investigating even the president and others. I can't go into details, but there were certain reasons for going to the branch, as I explained. Manager Emerson gave a brief bow of her head. I'm truly sorry for the numerous improprieties. Well, that's okay. Just remember not to judge or evaluate people based on their education. It benefits no one. Yes, I will take that to heart. Manager Emerson raised her head slowly after that. But why has an audit officer like yourself come to our HR department? Acknowledging that there was no escaping it, I responded. Of course, for auditing purposes. And it happens that this HR department is the subject of the audit. The HR personnel was agitated by what I said. The first person to object was then Manager Emerson. Wait, there's nothing wrong with our HR department. I see the buzzing employees calm down. I'm not saying there's a problem with the entire HR department. Then what do you mean? It means the subject of the investigation is within HR. Manager Emerson's brows knitted. You mean it's you? Manager Emerson looked surprised, her eyes widening. What have I done to deserve this? Don't say such nonsense. I've reflected on judging people by their education alone and vowed never to do it again. Of course, it's not just about that. I wouldn't be here for just that reason alone. I'll discuss this matter with you alone from here on. Everyone else, please return to your work. Following my remarks, the staff went back to work, still in a buzz. I went to another room with Manager Emerson to carry on our chat. What was that all about? With a scarlet face from rage, Manager Emerson looked at me. I was approached by the sales department manager with a concern. There's a troublesome employee in the sales department. Her name is Nicole Emerson, your daughter. Manager Emerson suddenly looked away as I said this. My daughter? What about her? She seems to have quite a few issues. She lacks common sense and knowledge, and her attitude is poor. Apparently, she also lacks any motivation to work. Exactly, I replied. Manager Emerson protested vehemently. I can't do anything about that. As her parent, I can't look after her at work, and I can't believe what the sales department manager is saying to me. She's an excellent and proud daughter. I see. So you're saying the sales department manager is spreading rumors. That's right. My daughter graduated from a well-known private university in the city. How can she lack knowledge and common sense? Are you saying we should judge based on education? No, of course not. I do believe that most people with excellent educational backgrounds are capable. So the sales department manager is wrong then. I gave a headshake. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. We didn't rely solely on the sales manager's opinion. We conducted our own investigation beforehand. Investigation. Yes, my team observed Nicole's performance. We concluded that the sales manager's concerns were valid. Emerson, the manager, started to perspire. Is that true? Yes, unfortunately. She's not suitable as an employee of our company. Manager Emerson, though, continued to hold onto her position. Even the most talented individuals can be influenced by their environment. Indeed, that might be true. I'm sure my daughter isn't getting along with her manager or colleagues. Or maybe she's too talented and is being ostracized. In such a situation, it's impossible to work properly, leading to a bad attitude. I replied by nodding. That's a possibility we can't deny. Therefore, I'm planning to transfer my daughter to this HR department. Under my guidance, she can demonstrate her true abilities. It's best for both the employee and the company to work where they're most suited. That's definitely true, Manager Emerson said with an obviously satisfied smile. Then I will tell my daughter to submit a transfer request right away. Wait, please. Manager Emerson was about to pick up the phone when I stopped her. What is it? We need to do this quickly. Indeed, it's possible that Nicole's performance has been negatively affected by her environment. That's what I've been saying, Manager Emerson said in a sour tone. However, we are considering another possibility. What is that? Another possibility is that she might not have met our company's hiring standards in the first place. Manager Emerson sat back and laughed a little. What do you mean? That would imply that there was a problem with the recruitment process. If that's true, it's a serious issue. Yes, it is. But what we suspect isn't a mistake in the process. Then what is it? We think there may have been wrongdoing. Excuse me, do you realize what you're saying? Misconduct in the recruitment process. That's impossible. Anger filled Manager Emerson's eyes. I will not tolerate any further insults to my daughter. Of course, I'm not making baseless claims. There are inexplicable facts that point to this. What are they? In the process of investigating Nicole, we discovered her level of knowledge is alarmingly low. It's doubtful she even has a college education. I pulled out some documents. Here are some materials she created in the sales department. They contain errors and typos that are hard to believe. In her conversations with other employees, doubts have been raised about her basic knowledge. Emerson, the manager, gave a snort of disapproval. That's just a matter of personal perception. Typos can be a simple mistake or a computer error. Of course, my daughter should have checked her work, but to conclude she lacks common sense from that is unfair. I gave her a piece of paper and said, "True, such errors can happen. However, Nicole has achieved something unbelievable in a certain aspect." Manager Emerson was at a loss for words as he looked at the document. For the test, my daughter studied hard and prepared for the interview. That's the result of her efforts. If so, that's commendable. But are you suggesting all that knowledge just vanished after joining the company? That's hardly conceivable, isn't it? Then what are you trying to say? She did achieve excellent results in the test. That's a fact. That's why we suspect there was misconduct. I said emphatically, even if you say misconduct, what could my daughter have possibly done? Nicole couldn't have done it alone, but a manager in HR could certainly convey test content and interview points to their daughter. Right. Manager Emerson's face became pale as I said this. There's no way I would do such a thing. It's really difficult to believe, I said, to Manager Emerson's sneer. Look, I don't know what you're trying to do as an audit officer, but do you have any evidence? Evidence, you say? Yes, you've been talking freely, but it's all just your conjecture, isn't it? Is there any evidence? I shook my head. Evidence that I told my daughter about the test content. Unfortunately, no evidence has been found. That's why I came to HR hoping to find some. But it seems that won't be possible now. Manager Emerson chortled with triumph. Don't worry, you won't find any evidence because there's no such fact. I let out a long sigh. I see. I don't want to do this, but... What? You're still planning something without evidence. We have no choice but to prove it directly. It seemed that Manager Emerson was not understanding what I was saying. So we will have Nicole retake the recruitment test, only the written exam this time. Manager Emerson's face went pale when hearing this. What? Have her retake the test? Yes, that's unnecessary. She already passed the written exam. Why does she need to retake it? Because there's a possibility that she cheated. If she really got the top scores through her own ability, she should have no problem with the new test we've prepared. It's a different test, but at a similar level. What have we done? My daughter has been working properly. Unfortunately, she doesn't seem to have the will to work. It doesn't matter if she lacks knowledge or even if she cheated her way in, as long as she works properly. If that were the case, the sales manager wouldn't have consulted us. However, she lacks the most crucial thing, motivation. Manager Emerson gave me a bitter look. So you're doing this to fire her? It's not about firing her. It's about taking appropriate action. We feel the problem lies more with you, Manager Emerson, than with Nicole. Me? Yes, if you, as the HR manager, used your position to get your daughter into the company, it's a matter of credibility for our company. We'll deal with this before it becomes public. What will you do? In the worst case, it's termination for both Nicole and you. Manager Emerson started to cry as I said this. Wait, please listen to me. What is it? Actually, I didn't want to do this. Nicole insisted, and I couldn't refuse. I thought if she failed at her job, I would resign myself. It's true, I did it. Manager Emerson was reluctantly cornered and prepared to give up on her daughter in order to rescue herself. Her ignorance was astounding. No more excuses. After a thorough investigation, we'll decide the disciplinary action for you both. Until then, you're on house arrest. Stay home and wait quietly. Manager Emerson left the organization with a dejected expression after that. Nicole, on the other hand, was told and appeared to be pleased with her early departure. She departed the business. The inquiry did in fact uncover the misbehavior. Manager Emerson had explained the test and interview procedure to her daughter. She had acted in desperation on behalf of her daughter, who was unemployed. Manager Emerson was demoted and moved to a branch, and Nicole eventually lost her job. Despite her hard work at the branch, she felt uneasy and quit because of rumors that had started to circulate. Her current income comes from odd jobs. Nicole, on the other hand, did not seek employment elsewhere and eventually was abandoned, leaving her without a place to live. In my case, I carried out more audit officer investigations. I received recognition for my achievements, and I was given the vice president position. She went excited and said, "It's amazing," when she noticed my large smile. She threw open her mouth, biting down as eagerly as she sucked it in from me. I felt happy too, seeing her expression of excitement. She said, "I feel so incredibly happy," with tears welling up in her eyes when I asked her what she thought. I thought that was the most beautiful smile ever. However, a lot had already transpired before she smiled at me. Scene Taylor, I'm 30 years old. At the cake shop owned by my family, I work as a pastry chef. We were short-staffed since a staff member had quit. After working overtime, I was worn out on this particular day. I chose to live alone since I work at my family's shop, which allowed me to unwind and take things slowly when I got home. The family cake bakery is roughly a 15-minute walk from my apartment. That day, while I was making my way home down the pedestrian bridge's stairs, I fell and lost a step. I think it was because I was feeling really tired and lightheaded. When I hit something, I felt agony at first, but after that, I don't recall anything. That I didn't run into anyone was lucky. My consciousness returned to find that I was being taken to the hospital. A nurse said, "Mr. Taylor, can you hear me?" A common sentence in medical dramas. Faintly aware, I looked in the direction of the voice. The nurse was ready to get her hands on my garments. The white uniform the gorgeous nurse was preparing to strip me of was so tight it was bursting at the seams. I was no different from most males in that we are especially vulnerable when it comes to well-endowed women. I thought she was quite beautiful. Yes, I was just like the nurse who was in front of me. I couldn't remember where I saw her face, but I had the feeling that I had seen it before. Anyway, I felt fortunate to have encountered a lovely nurse, even if I was unaware of the full depth of my own injuries. Then I passed out once more. The next time I woke up, the therapy had already ended and I was completely awake. I had no idea that the stunning nurse I felt fortunate to meet was someone I genuinely knew, even though I was in a haze from being relocated. Wilson. Margaret Wilson. Is that right? I whispered to the nurse who had been for a visit. With a smile, she waved her name badge above her chest. That's right. It's been a while. When you were brought in, you didn't react at all, so I thought you had forgotten me. No. I was just in a daze back then. There's no way I could forget. Yes, it was impossible for me to forget. My first love was her. When we were in elementary school, we were classmates. She was intelligent, compassionate, adorable, and as straight a student. Everyone liked her in our class. I, on the other hand, struggled with learning and was not good at athletics. She was the one that everyone teased all the time. She was always there, quietly supporting me. My first love was her. She was taller than me then, and I had this silly notion that one day I would grow up and tell her how I really felt. However, that day was never to come. When we were in 5th grade, she moved to a new school. It was really abrupt, but I believe she said it was related to her father's new work. I was unable to disclose anything, of course, and all I could say was, "I see you later." It seemed unthinkable to run into my first love again in such a circumstance. Furthermore, I was relieved that she too had recollections of me. She took time out of her hospital stay to come to my room. She even brought food while she wasn't at work. Every day I looked forward to our conversations. The best part of my day was that. However, the discharge day arrived soon. I plucked up the guts to ask for her contact details since I didn't want our leaving to be as simple as "see you later" as it was in elementary school. She immediately agreed when I asked, "Can I have your contact?" I was so scared that I felt she could hear my heart racing. "Of course, that's fine. I've lost touch with all our classmates from back then, so I'm happy that you reached out to me." Her soft grin made it quite evident to me that I had fallen in love with her again. Most likely all she thought of me was that I was a classmate she had reconnected with. I intended to somehow win her over and establish myself as a possible love partner from this point on. That was my thought process. We chatted and texted back and forth after I was released. Furthermore, we began going out to dinner together. Her memories of my elementary school years were mostly embarrassing and awkward stories, such as the time I sobbed because I was forbidden from eating mushrooms, the time I was struck in the face by a basketball pass, or the time I tumbled into a ditch with my school bag and got covered in mud. That didn't stop her from laughing and telling me, "You were cute back then, so I thought it was acceptable to be awkward." I told her how I felt at one of our meals together. I invited Margaret out, and she became quiet. I had tried my luck with a confession, but it was disheartening when she finally murmured, "I'm sorry," in a quiet voice. But I tried to keep a happy face because her expression was serious and she appeared to be remorseful. "No, don't worry about it. I just wanted to express my feelings. I don't think I can be a match for someone like you, Margaret." Margaret was agitated and refuted my statement. "No, it's not like that. It's not that I dislike you or anything." She looked to be trying to express something else. "Is there another reason? If you don't want to say it, that's fine, but if you want to let it out, I'm here to listen." Margaret seems to have made up her mind after hearing what I had to say. She sighed a little and started talking. I was married once. I'm divorced. I got married right after college. He was really kind, and I loved him so much, but he cheated on me. One of the nights I had a night shift, and there was a sudden change in my schedule. I came home and found a woman I didn't know there, and it wasn't the first time. It seemed like he had been bringing women over whenever I had a night shift. I could tell she was trembling because of the way her voice was shaking. Our relationship didn't allow for me to grasp her hand, which angered me. I had no idea until then. After that, it became difficult for me to trust in a relationship. So, I'm sorry. She honestly acknowledged my thoughts and courageously spoke out about her traumatic experiences. I only felt thankful for her. As soon as she found out how I felt, she suggested that we stop talking to each other. I was the one clinging to her for dear life. I said that even if we were just friends again, I wanted to get together. I wanted to cheer up my first love, who had suffered. I rejected your confession. Are you okay with meeting me?" I gave that loud, "No way" shake of my head when I heard those words. Naturally, no. She finally cracked a smile at my desperation. Margaret and I kept meeting as friends, just the two of us, after that. It was changed around 6 months later. It all began with a mishap. I was a part of an intoxicated driver's collision into the pedestrian crossing. I instantly reached out to shield the kid who was strolling next to me. It seemed like the automobile hit me and threw me a short distance. I found myself in a hospital room when I became conscious again. It was 2 days after the accident when I woke up. Margaret wasn't at the hospital where I was this time. I was at a different one. My folks were with me instead. I noticed a rush of missed calls and messages from Margaret when I looked at my phone. On the day of the mishap, we were supposed to meet. Her texts, written after 2 days of no communication and being unable to get through, showed concern for my welfare. I called her quickly, but she didn't answer. I contacted the hospital where she worked, even though I knew she was probably at work and didn't want to worry her further. 2 hours later, after I was able to get through to her, she visited my hospital room. My parents had just departed. To be honest, I was shocked to see her that day because I had assumed she wouldn't be available due to her job. "Why are you here? What about work?" She did not, however, respond to my query. Rather, tears started to fall down her cheeks. She didn't answer when I tried to talk to her in a panic. I even offered her tissues so she could stop crying, but she declined. She didn't care if her face got covered in tears as she kept crying. She continued lecturing me nonstop after she had sobbed for as long as she wanted to. "Scene, you get injured way too much. How many times do you have to be taken to the hospital to learn your lesson?" She had reprimanded me for the first time. Well, it seemed more like she was lending a hand to someone this time. Help people without getting injured, you idiot. Even though she was frantic and passionate, occasionally her remarks made little sense. But I realized that she was actually concerned about me. She was worried at night and couldn't sleep for the 2 days she couldn't get in touch with me. She left early and hurried to my side as soon as she heard from me at her place of employment. Even though I was attempting to protect a youngster in the accident, I couldn't help but feel guilty for worrying her when I saw how puffy and bagged her eyes were. I felt dead, suddenly, appearing without a word. She emphasized her point, saying, "Let's stop this kind of thing. This will be the last time, okay? I'll be careful from now on. I won't worry you," I further pledged. When she saw me again, she said, almost silently, "This is dangerous." "Huh?" I asked, surprised and speechless. That's when her first smile of the day appeared on her face. "I can't just leave a clumsy person like you alone. I have to keep an eye on you," she stated. "So, you mean like as friends?" I questioned warily. Grinning, Margaret remarked, "As a boyfriend and a girlfriend." I froze for a full 3 seconds before yelling, "Yes," and striking a victorious pose. I had to click the nurse call button since it hurt my broken rib a little, but I was too delighted to care. Margaret and I had an easy relationship after that, and we made the decision to get married a year later. But for the first time since we became romantically involved, Margaret and I had disagreements. It was a few days before our wedding, on the day I got home from work. Margaret had been my roommate for 2 months, and she was always the first to welcome me home from work. Margaret, though, wasn't there to greet me that day. I went into the living room because I felt funny, and I was shocked by what I saw. Margaret was in tears. She was crying silently, her hands over her face. "Dua, what's wrong?" I nervously walked up to Margaret. With tears in her eyes, she withdrew her hands from her face. I had told her I would be late because of work, but I had only arrived home after 10 p.m. "What were you doing? It's so late." "Didn't I tell you it's because of work?" I didn't get Margaret's meaning when she said, "Really? It seems like it's not really work lately. Hasn't it been happening every day? Is the cake shop that busy at this time of year?" Other than work, there was no excuse for me to be late. She should have realized that I didn't have any interests or go on frequent outings with friends. Margaret asked, sobbing, "You're not seeing someone, are you? Like another woman?" And more tears poured down her cheeks. That's when it finally dawned on me that Margaret thought I was cheating. It was accurate to say that during the previous month, I had been working overtime often. Did she carry this worry with her every day? Margaret had already gone through a divorce as a result of her partner's adultery. Upon learning how much I had worried Margaret over the past month, I felt very pitiful. Margaret's hands were firmly in both of mine. "I'm sorry. I started working late suddenly, and it made you anxious. As for me, I was evasive when Margaret asked about the specifics of my overtime work. Whenever I asked for details about your work, you always deflected the question. I wondered if you couldn't tell me. I believe you wouldn't cheat, but because of my past and the fear of being kept in the dark, I felt anxious. Despite my best efforts to make Margaret happy, I wound up hurting her. There was nothing left to do but tell her the truth at this point. I said to Margaret, "Come with me." I worked at my family's cake shop. The refrigerator was filled with samples and drawings of cakes. Looking at the illustrations, Margaret muttered, "Is this a wedding cake?" Yes, I wanted to make our wedding cake myself. I've been thinking about what kind of cake would be good. I wanted to surprise you and make you happy. That's why I couldn't talk much about my overtime work. But it made you anxious, didn't it? Margaret sighed deeply when she heard what I had to say. Maybe all along she had been tense. I'm sorry for doubting you. It's all right. They say it's common to feel anxious before getting married, and considering your past with your ex-husband, I understand how being kept in the dark can make you anxious. I'm sorry for making you worry. Margaret said, "It's delicious," with a smile on her face after we apologized and she excitedly tasted the cake samples I had cooked. Looking back, we realized that we hadn't spent much time together because we had been so busy getting ready for the wedding and making trial wedding cakes for the surprise. I felt as though I hadn't seen Margaret grin like this in a long time. Margaret seemed unconcerned as she said, "I'm looking forward to the wedding cake." Though it's a shame it wasn't going to be a surprise, Margaret needs to feel at ease. I made a decision to produce the best cake ever at that very moment. I'll do my best, so look forward to it. She looked stunning in her wedding gown on the day of the nuptials, and that was said without prejudice. When Margaret saw my big wedding cake, she was ecstatic. "I made it just for her, so please eat it," I joked, when she replied she couldn't eat it because it was a waste. Margaret and I were smiling with happiness for the first bite, when the bride and groom feed each other cake in front of everyone. Margaret grabbed my hand and gripped the spoon tightly as I scooped up the cake and presented it to her. She then let her mouth drop open and nibbled into the cake. She grinned and added, "I'm so happy. It's the most delicious cake I've ever had. Thank you so much." She was the most stunning person I had ever seen, and I was even more determined to see her happy. I used to believe that I was prone to mishaps and had a bad luck streak, yet I was able to marry such a lovely lady because of my injuries. I'm beginning to believe that I may truly be fortunate. How are things going? As a subscriber, you may help us out with our production. I'll see you in the upcoming video.